everyone! Welcome back to another theory video for the upcoming patch of 6.0 Endwalker. I didn't really take this particular theory too seriously until now, but I feel that it was worth at least looking into. And from the title, I'm sure you already know what this is about. It's the one and only Emet-Selch. Or, is there really one and only? To start off with, I have to say that I love Emet-Selch. He is the villain that just about everyone has loved since he first appeared at the end of Stormblood. In fact, he's so beloved, no one really wants to use the word villain associated with him. It's always antagonist, and there's a good reason for that. Apart from the heroes of the story, just as important are those who stand in their way, and it takes a very special type of storytelling to actually get people to love the antagonist as much as the protagonist. Just as a quick bit of history, Emet-Selch, or his real name is Hades, was one of the Unsundered. He was one of only 3 beings who managed to escape the sundering of the worlds. Before that, he was actually a member of the Convocation of 14 of the city of Amaurot. After the summoning of Zodiark ending with the battle between him and Hydaelyn, he was somehow able to escape the same fate as everyone else, leaving only him, Elidibus, and La Habrea as the only ones left with memories of the old world. From then on, the 3 of them labored to cause the rejoinings, to have the world back as the way it was supposed to be. At least in their eyes, how it was supposed to be. Emet-Selch had been the one who built up both the Allagan and Garlean empires. Even Elidibus stated that building such empires was his specialty. As for us, the character, we're not officially introduced to him until Shadowbringers, where we actually meet him face to face. He was first seen observing the Scions and the Warrior of Darkness from afar, and he was later not only the one who saved Y'shtola from the Lifestream, but he was also the one who shared the events of what happened leading up to the Sundering. With the biggest bombshell in that Hydaelyn and Zodiark are both ancient primals, and that the Ascians' actions are justified in their eyes because the rest of humanity is just fragments of their true selves and shouldn't be considered people. At least that's how they see it. Despite how the Scions fought their way to him at the end of the story, Emet-Selch still remained unconvinced of their worth and easily defeated them until the souls of both the Warrior of Darkness and Oddbird fused together and were able to stabilize the lights inside them. Overwhelmed, despite channeling his kin's collective power, Hades accepted his death, asking the Warrior of Light to remember their people before fading away with a smile. One would think that would be the end of it, at least until much later on when the Warrior of Darkness acquires a crystal that Emet-Selch had secretly created with the memories and powers of the 14th member of the Convocation and his dearest friend. This crystal seems to hold a touch of Azem's magic, and even a shade in the recreated Amaurot suggested that Emet-Selch didn't wish for Elidibus to be left alone after his death. During the battle between Elidibus and the Warrior of Darkness, Emet-Selch appears in his ancient guise and summons the party back from the void with a snap of his fingers before giving his trademark wave to Elidibus. That seems to be the end of it, right? Well, what if there were a chance that Emet-Selch may still have an appearance in Endwalker? Don't get me wrong, like I said before, as much as I love Emet-Selch, I'm not sure if that would be the best idea. He is by far one of the best antagonists, if not the very best that we've seen from a Final Fantasy game. Very few characters actually seem to be up on that same kind of level. We have a character who bears the full burdens of centuries of sorrow and pain over all that he and his people lost and expresses deep melancholy over Amaurot's fall. Whenever he speaks his true feelings, his voice deepens and becomes more grave. Every time he walks, it's like he's hunched over, as if he's struggling underneath a heavy burden. It's only at the end, when he's standing straight up tall, that pain just seems to leave him, because he's finally free from this self-appointed duty. And it's thanks to him that we actually have a much clearer idea of what happened, like what is going on, like the true history and the truth that lies at the heart of the star. Then again, I guess it's not really a surprise, since his title is to the Final Fantasy XII Scions of Light, the Angel of Truth. So it's really not a surprise that he ended up being the one to tell us the truth, at least part of it. A part of me thinks that there is still much more to the story that we don't know. Maybe even Emet-Selch himself didn't know. We still have some gaps in the tale of the final days, and I feel that until we get all of it, we may not be able to fully avoid a repeat of the end of the world. Unfortunately, he's no longer here, so there's not much we can do about it. At least that's what they want you to think. This theory is that there is a chance, however slim, that Emet-Selch may be coming back in some way. This theory came from the trailer of Endwalker, and we're listening to a voice narrate about what's happening, either about what happened in the ancient past, or narrating what's going to be waiting for us in the future. This voice was confirmed to be Emet-Selch's voice. The thing is that we don't know if it's really him talking, maybe it's some kind of recording, maybe it's some kind of specter, kind of creature, like how he appeared to help us in their battle against Ilsabard. Because if you listen to it, it sounds like it could work either way, either as some kind of recording that was left behind describing the final days as they happened, at least back at the beginning, or if someone is actually speaking about the events that are threatening to come, almost like a prophecy. But there is also the fact that the Garleans were experimenting with cloning. We know that it is possible for them to create copies of people. They were able to gain this kind of technology from studying Alog ruins, which Emet-Selch had helped to build in the first place, if you remember. Yet it was stated that these were just empty vessels. These are just lumps of flesh made to look like Emet-Selch's younger form when he was still Emperor Solus. And these cloned bodies were really just on standby for him in case he needed to inhabit them. Now, as much as we love Hades, everything about him as a character, to his backstory, to his personality, and even his little oddities, I just love. But is it really a good idea to bring him back in Endwalker? The thing with this game is that it does get kind of tiresome after a while once you realize it, but they have a hard time letting good characters go. I mean, like with Gaius, Nidhogg, Gosetsu, Yosetsu, Xenos, especially with Yastola, whom they brought back from death not once, not twice, but 3 times. Do we really want to continue with this? The old cliche can work, but when you overdo it, that's when it becomes a little annoying, at least in my opinion. Hades had the perfect send-off at the end of 5.0, and where he battled against the Warrior of Darkness, brought everything he had to bear, carrying all those weight of all those centuries upon his back, and even welcomed death gracefully, for he was finally allowed to rest and be free of his burdens. Sure, it was a little bit of a surprise when he made a brief appearance during our battle with Ilsabard, but at the same time, it worked, because he wasn't really back. He was here helping us to help an old friend finally lay down his burdens as well. I mean, I don't think I can come up with a better ending for what happened to him at the end of Shadowbringers, so I'm sorry. As much as I'm a fan of Emet-Selch, I just can't see him returning in the flesh, so to speak, without kind of ruining that character. But what if there was some other means? The fact that Emet-Selch was able to return, even for just a brief moment, to help us out against the fights against Ilsabard does not necessarily mean that he's gone for good. It could be that maybe he left some sort of piece behind. Maybe he left behind like some kind of fragment of himself. Like, I wouldn't go as far as to say like a piece of his soul, because his soul was undamaged. It was whole. That was what made the Unsundered so powerful and special. But he could have left behind some kind of trace remnant of him, like maybe some sort of memory of him, like a recording. He did leave behind all those crystals of the Convocation members, which contained all the memories of the former Convocation members as well. The use for these crystals was when they found a fragment of the soul of the original Convocation members. All they had to do was use these crystals to rise them up. Basically cause them to remember who they were and help restore maybe a little bit of their powers, just so that they can bring them into the fold, so that they can continue to help with the rejoining efforts. Emet-Selch can't do that though, because it's not like he was sundered. His soul was completely whole, so there's no unsundered soul fragment that they can bring up. But I still think that there is definitely more to this tale, because Emet-Selch, he was a genius. He was very smart. He had centuries of being able to manipulate people, like plan around people, like probably planning like centuries in advance for everything that's going to happen. And it would really have surprised me if he did not feel like there was something wrong with Van Daniel. I think he felt that there may be a chance that once Van Daniel realized that the Unsundered was gone, maybe not necessarily Van Daniel, but at least one of the other Convocation members, because they're a bit out of control. We got this with both Nabrialis and with a little bit with Egeorm. The Sundered Ascians, they seem to care more about the idea of releasing Zodiark rather than restoring the world to how it used to be. So I think that Emet-Selch would probably have been aware that without the Unsundered, especially without Elidibus, then they could very well destroy this world. They could very easily have done a lot of damage if something wasn't done. So it's possible, at least in my mind, that he might have been planning that Fandaniel or one of the other Ascians, I'm not pointing fingers who here, but he probably would have realized that without having somebody there to kind of keep the other Convocation members on a leash, like keep them under control, then they could pretty much destroy everything. So he could have left behind like some kind of fragment, maybe to help the Warrior of Light / Darkness. Maybe at least leave behind some kind of recording of like the full history. Maybe we have to try to explore more, see more, like experience more, and we try to unlock these pieces, put together the puzzle pieces all together, and that will give us a clear idea of what's going on, what they're planning on doing, maybe how to even stop what's coming. So while I think that the idea of Emet-Selch himself coming back is very unlikely, it is possible that he could have maybe used like one of his clones to grant it a will. Now there are going to be some major spoilers here for the Crystal Tower series. If you haven't seen or played that through yet, here's just a heads up warning. But basically what happened was back with the Allagan Empire, a scientist and I guess magician named Anmon was able to resurrect the former first Emperor Xande. He felt that the whole nation of Allag was basically falling into disrepair because they didn't have a strong leader. But none of the leaders that they ever had was as strong as Emperor Xande, who was the first. So Amon worked hard to be able to resurrect Xande, and this included coming up with the idea of clones. So eventually, after a lot of trial and effort, he managed to resurrect Emperor Xande. Now, at first, Emperor Xande was able to bring back the empire to the way it was before. It brought it back from the brink, raised it up to their glory days once again. However, he wanted to bring all the world under the rule of Allag, so that began his conquest to take over the world. And he made good progress. He was able to go as far as the southern island of Mericidia, so he was able to take that under control, but I think that the whole idea just wasn't satisfying to him as much as he thought it would be, because the idea of death was kind of still on his mind. Basically, he feared that if all of what we have now is destined to fade away, why even try? So he tried to make a pact with the Cloud of Darkness, an incredibly powerful void sent from the World of Darkness, or the Void if you prefer. Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, the people of Allag were very against this idea, and that was kind of what led to the whole rebellion against Allag, which eventually was what caused the massive earthquake, which ended up pretty much desolating the whole Allagan Empire. But before all of that happened, two of the Emperor's progeny, we have Doga and Yuni. So these two were originally part of the royal family of Allag, and at first they were very supportive of the idea of having Emperor Xande on the throne again, at least until they found out what the Emperor was planning and basically bringing forth a giant monster from the void to destroy the world. So they did everything in their power to try to stop him. Unfortunately, they weren't able to do that, but they did set up a precaution should they fail. They took two of their clones and imparted them their wills, like a part of themselves. I'm not really sure how that process worked, but these two clones were given a will of their own to kind of carry out the mission that the original Doga and Yuni had. And that particular will survived for thousands of years inside the Crystal Tower until it reemerged at the end of the 7th Umbral Calamity, and they were able to kind of act of their own. So I'm thinking that if there is ever a chance that Emet-Selch could make a return, then maybe a part of himself as a clone could possibly make a reappearance. Again, I'm not saying it's going to be the real Emet-Selch, but maybe this clone could possibly have inherited his original master's will, like his original self. So I think that if there is any way that Emet-Selch is going to return, it will probably be through those means, at least something similar along those lines. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I do think that Emet-Selch just had the perfect ending when it came to Shadowbringers, But again, it's not like it's the same Emet-Selch. This is just a clone that inherited his appearance and his will. So it's certainly possible, and I am all for it. I mean, I can't think of a time when they let us down yet, so I have really high hopes that if they are bringing him back, it's going to be along something of those lines. Anyway, everyone, that's it from me. Thank you all so much for listening and watching to my theory. What did you all think of it? This is just my idea about what I think about the theory that Emet-Selch might be coming back for Endwalker. Again, I'd be very surprised if he did, but at the same time, I would be very surprised if they don't reference him, maybe bring up something about him. And I think he might have left something special behind for the Warrior of Light. At least that's what I think. Anyway, that's going to be it for right now. I hope you enjoyed it and that you'll be looking forward to a theory that I have coming next week. And I was planning on doing the Anima video. I didn't really have too much time for that. So this is just going to be with Emet-Selch for right now. But I am going to try to get the one about Anima out sometime next week. So until then, everyone, thank you so much for watching and take care. Bye.